restaurants. And just like larger newspapers and magazines, there's a puzzle page with Sudoku and crossword puzzles on page 19. And to wrap it all up, public notices and trade winds, employment, merchandise, and services ads are on pages 22 and 23. The ICO is your one-stop source for all the news and happenings on the Mendonoma coast. If you are not yet a subscriber, go to mendonoma.com and sign up, or pick up a copy at one of our local markets. Thanks for reading and for supporting the local businesses that advertise in the ICO. The ICO is your one-stop source for all the news and happenings on the Mendonoma coast. If you are not yet a subscriber, go to mendonoma.com and sign up, or pick up a copy at one of our local markets. This is Mark Hancock thanking you for reading and for supporting the local businesses that advertise in the Independent Coast Observer.
This is Sheriff Matt Kendall, the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. You're listening to KGUA 88.3 in Wallala and KBVE 107.9 in Boonville.
And welcome back to the Ocean Life Symposium 2025 here on KGUA. If you're listening here on the Northern California coast or inland on KBVE 107.9, hope you're enjoying the sunshine. It turned out to be a fabulous day out there. While we are here bringing you all these wonderful speakers and so much education on the world right here to our left on the Pacific coast. So, this is our last hour of the day, hosted by Miss Sherry Goforth. Sherry, how you hanging in there?
Oh, we're doing just fine. This has been great.
Yes, it's her first year hosting, and she's been fabulous. And all the presentations have been so informative and so interesting. And our last speaker of the day is Zack Klyver. Sherry, tell us all about Zack that's coming up.
Thanks, Sevi. Um, Zack Klyver is a global leader in marine mammal education and conservation. He's participated in marine mammal ecotourism and conservation from the Arctic to Antarctica, including guiding over 3,000 whale watching tours on the Gulf of Maine. He co founded and currently chairs the North Atlantic Whale Watch Naturalists Association. He has worked as marine mammal lecturer and guide in Antarctica with Abercrombie and Kent in 2000. In 2011, he founded Flukes International Whale Tours to take people to see whales in the best places in the world, including Baja, Mexico, to see blue whales. Zack co founded and served as science director for a Maine based business that worked on the conservation of North Atlantic right whales for 4 years by testing ropeless lobster fishing gear and pioneering the use of ropeless fishing in gillnet fisheries. Today, Zack is a marine mammal advisor to the Blue Green Futures team, who are developing natural capital markets, including the economic value of whales based on their ecosystem services and serve Regional Wildlife Science Collaborative for offshore wind. He assisted in the coordination of right whale surveys with the Canadian Whale Institute and New England Aquarium, searching for an unknown mating ground for right whales, and spent 10 winter seasons as an endangered right whale and sea turtle observer in the southeast. He has worked as a marine mammal observer in the Arctic, going from Nome to the Beaufort Sea, where he encountered polar bears and bowhead whales. Zack has been part of several environmental startup companies and has worked with many nonprofits as a board member or in leadership. His parents taught school in Africa, where he was born in Nairobi, Kenya, where he grew up in Eastport, Maine, and is a graduate of the College of the Atlantic with a BA in human ecology. So, with that, I'd like to introduce Zack. Welcome, Zack.
Hi, thank you so much. Let's see. How's that? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. It's great to be with you. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you to KGUA, and thank you so much to Scott and Teresa for organizing the Ocean Life Symposium. And they're always great mentors and inspiration to all of us in conservation with the ocean. So we really appreciate all their efforts to educate everybody about the ocean and its importance. And I'm so happy to have a chance to speak with you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. How's that? Can you see?
Yeah, it's coming through just fine.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Okay, so this is a picture. My title of my presentation is Cassius Ledge, a Gulf of Maine National Marine Sanctuary ? This is a picture I took headed out onto the Gulf of Maine, going to Cassius Ledge early one morning. And some of the surveys that I was doing that for right whales, we would leave in the dark and we get to watch the sunrise over the ocean during the winter months. And you can see some of that sea smoke coming up off the ocean on a cold sunrise morning in the Gulf of Maine. So in 2004, there was a Navy ship that left Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and headed out into the Gulf of Maine. And they got offshore and they came upon a great group of whales. They saw blows in all directions. And they called the Coast Guard and they reported the sighting. And the next day, NOAA and their aerial survey team put up a plane. And they went to the area and they found 24 right whales. And that was then they proceeded to continue sending the planes up during the winter months and sighted more and more right whales. And this went on for a number of years, where during the months of November, December, and January, large numbers of this very critically endangered whale, there's now only about 370, let's see, the number was 376, and it just got increased this year to 384. So this is not just an endangered species, it's a critically endangered species. And at this time, we were unsure of where this unknown, what was being described as an unknown mating ground for right whales was located. But we found scientists found this enormous aggregation of right whales in the Gulf of Maine, out in Jordan Basin and Cassius Ledge, kind of in the middle of the Gulf of Maine. During the winter months, and proceeded to do aerial surveys where they fly out and photograph the whales from above. And with the right whale, they have this unique pattern on the top of the head made of callosities, these rough patches of skin that carry cyanide lice, and they stay with the whale over its life. And each whale has a unique pattern on its head. These are bonnets that they have running down the top of the head, and then they have sideburns and eyelashes, and all this white patches, these rough patches on top of the head, are unique to each individual. So every right whale is known by name. There's now over 100,000 sighting events of right whales in their collection of photographs. It's one of the most studied whales in the world, and every whale is tracked, and there's a tremendous number of aerial survey teams, maybe 10 survey teams now that go up looking for right whales. So in 2009, the World Marine Mammal Conference was in Quebec, Canada. And at the conference, I went to Mo Brown, who was a longtime friend of mine and renowned whale researcher, one of the top whale researchers in the world. And she's Canadian. And she has worked in the United States and in Canada, and now is the founder and director of the Canadian Whale Institute. Mo is very renowned for having a large amount of effort to do with the changing of the shipping lane up in the Bay of Fundy that rerouted ships. If you look to the right of the screen, you can see the Bay of Fundy with Nova Scotia at the bottom, and then New Brunswick and Maine to the top. And there's a ship channel that goes in the top picture would go historically right through this very important feeding ground for right whales, where it's a deep water basin called the Grand Manan Basin. Grand Manan is the big island adjacent to it, and this the current circulates in there to create historically tremendous amounts of copepods that the right whales feed on. And so they would gather in this basin, and the shipping lane went right over part of it, and a lot of right whales were being hit and killed by ships, especially going up to St. John, New Brunswick, where there was an Irving oil refinery there for refining oil. So Mo got on her motorcycle and drove up there and met with the folks at Irving Oil and started negotiating meetings and bringing in the international, IMO, which manages all the shipping lanes in the world. And within a few years, they were able to move the shipping lane around the basin so that the ships would avoid going right through where the right whales were feeding. So she's among many accomplishments. This is one of her most renowned. And she's just a fantastic person as well as being a remarkable scientist and a great communicator. So I asked her if she had interest in using the whale watching boats that I was working on out of Bar Harbor, Maine, to go out to the Gulf of Maine in the winter and do surveys from boats to not only, uh, the work that was going on with the planes, but to match that work with boat-based surveys. And it turns out she was really interested in that. And so we were able to put together a project, and for a couple of years we did winter surveys for right whales. And one of the reasons that she was most interested in getting out there was to understand if this area was a mating ground for right whales. If they were mating at that time of year, the planes would see groups of right whales together in what are called SAGs, surface active groups, where a female that is ready to mate, males will come and they'll battle over her for the right to mate. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to get out there was to see if we could observe this, but also if we could check and sample the fecal plumes that are left at the surface that whales leave. Scientists can look in that and analyze the fecal plumes or the feces and for hormones like progesterone and estrogen to see if a female right whale is in estrus, if she's at that time when she's at peak availability for mating. So this is part of what we were hoping to do. And so this little video shows you what it would look like to encounter a surface active group of right whales that are mating. Okay, so this is how we wound up then on this boat, the Friendship 5, that departs from Bar Harbor, going out to do winter surveys for right whales. So this is the vessel we use. It's a high-speed catamaran that we use for whale watching, and so we would leave, in November and December. It's very dark in Maine. We would leave in the dark, and we would travel a couple of hours to get offshore so that we'd arrive offshore where the right whales were at sunrise. So we invariably we'd leave in the dark, like at 3:30, 4 in the morning, to get offshore and be there right at sunrise, so we could have as much time of the day as possible on the water. And we would bring the big groups of people that were interested in whales in the ocean along with us, scientists from Allied Whale and from the state of Maine, and fishermen we brought along on the trips to see the whales as well so they could see them. So this is a group photo of one of our trips. And so we would actually have a rotation because it was so cold. We would have 6 people outside looking for right whales in all directions, along with the scientists from the right whale research team that would be out. But we'd have dedicated people with binoculars looking in all directions, and we'd have a count of all the seabirds that was taking place as well. So, and then we'd have a rotation, a schedule. So you'd be like 15 minutes in one spot and then move, and it really kept things going, and I think worked really well, to be able to survey a lot of the ocean and make sure that we didn't miss anything as we traveled over the sea. So on this morning on December 13th of 2011 that we left, Mo had come up from Massachusetts, where apparently they have a coffee called Ahab's Revenge. And maybe some of you are familiar with it. There's a picture of it here. And she had brought Ahab's Revenge with her. And so at 3:30 in the morning on the boat in the freezing cold, we were there making, Ahab's Revenge, which turned out to be like, very, very thick, rich, dark coffee. And so then we went out into 4 to 5 foot seas. And I have spent over 3 years of my life on the ocean, and I've rarely gotten seasick. But on that morning, I did. And so I was on the back of the boat with Mo Brown together, both of us throwing up Ahab's Revenge as we bounded over the ocean into the waves in the dark. So that was quite an experience. one of my very fun moments in marine mammal research. So of course we did see a lot of right whales on our surveys. This is taken on one of the trips where one of the right whales was breaching. We were working under a scientific permit because you may know with the North Atlantic right whale, you're not allowed to get within 500 yards of them, but we had a permit to do so. So we got we had some incredible encounters. And one trip we saw 35 right whales. And on that day, on December 13th, 2011, we wound up at Cassius Ledge, it's 100 miles from Bar Harbor, offshore, in the middle of the Gulf of Maine. It was my first time going to Cassius Ledge, and there were right whales all over Cassius Ledge. That day, we had 23 right whales in total. We identified 18 of them. And at the end of the day, I think there were 9 or 10 on Cassius Ledge. And everywhere you looked, there were blows. And I remember distinctly, as the orange sun was setting, the right whales leaping into the sun so you could see them breaching against the sun. And there were dolphins all around. And it was just, an incredible experience and an incredible first experience. That was my first introduction to Cassius Ledge. And so that really piqued my fascination with Cassius Ledge and my love for that location and my want to go back and to be there more. We also saw a lot of seabirds on these trips. During the winter, it's a whole different collection of seabirds in the Gulf of Maine than it is in the summer. We have birds from the north that nest up in Greenland, like the northern fulmar, which nests farther north than any other seabird. And they're a stocky little bird that's like a buoy with wings, and they flap and glide over the ocean. They come in different color phases. That day we saw 270 northern fulmars, and a lot of them at Cassius Ledge. And then we also in the winter we see a lot of dovekies, which you don't see in the summer. In the on our trips, normally we see puffins and other birds in the puffin family. The dovekey is a northern a very small bird in the alcid family that also nests far to the north and then come down into the Gulf of Maine during the winter months. They're in Europe. They're called the little auk, and they're just tiny little birds, black and white, really, really fun. So where is Cassius Ledge? So Cassius Ledge is in the middle of the Gulf of Maine. Here's a map that gives you an idea of the location. This is the Maine coast up above here, and then you've got this arm that sticks out here on the left. That is Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The Gulf of Maine, 36,000 square miles. And of course, it's one of the dominant features is the Bay of Fundy up here at the top in the right corner, where the tides can be 30 or 40 feet. So enormous tides. It's a very shallow sea. The average depth is 500 feet here in the Gulf of Maine. Whereas out in the Atlantic, the average depth is 11,000 feet. So it's quite different than California, where the water depth drops off so quickly. Here we have this enormous bathtub of an ocean that's out here. That's a shallow water sea that is super productive and super rich in seafood and marine life. So the highest peak at Cassius Ledge is called Almond Rock, and at low tide, it's somewhere around 20 to 40 feet from the surface. So Cassius Ledge is a series of ledges and ridges, and in total, about 32 miles of underwater mountains that are all granitic. They're granite, like the coast of Maine, like the coast of Nova Scotia, the coast of Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. You may know New Hampshire is called the Granite State, right? So this too is an underwater mountain range that's all largely granite. And the granite is a magma rock, right? It's a volcanic rock, like you'd see in Yosemite, where they have a lot of granite. And here, the granite is a result of the spreading of the plates, because at one time, Africa and Europe were connected to North America, and then as the plates broke up through continental drift, the plates spread apart, and the Earth's crust along the coast of North America became thinner and thinner. And as it became thin, the volcanic magma in the Earth could bubble up, and that's what happened. We have a lot of granite or magma that bubbled up that then hardened into granite. And that's why that's such an important feature for our coastline. It turns out that the rock along the coast of Maine, a lot of it is a perfect match with Morocco in northern Africa. Maine and Morocco were once connected, right? All right, so let's see some of what makes Cassius Ledge so special. It's not just that it's a mountain range in the middle of the ocean that's kind of like an island oasis, but it has incredible sea life. So here's a short video. It's 3 or 4 minutes, and I think this will really help you dive underwater and experience why we're so focused on seeing this area have more protection.
We have a lot of radio listeners, Zach. So can you kind of describe as we go what we might be seeing?
Oh, of course. Yeah, what we're seeing is kelp and anemones and incredible sea life, divers diving over this area called Almond Rock, and lobsters and fish, just teeming with life. So it's a spectacular ocean environment. And there's a lot of text on the screen too that describes the work that's going on here. The scientific work. Where you have divers measuring the amounts of kelp and the amounts of sea life, so you can see them putting out uh, these rectangular hoops that can measure a certain area where they're relevating, like they're doing a census to see how productive the ocean is, what is the life that's there, the diversity, and then bringing some of it back to the surface to analyze it as well. All sorts of new species have been discovered out there. It's kind of, or at least different subspecies and different phases and color phases of life. It's one of the most, it may be the most productive and abundant area in the northeastern seaboard of the United States, and it is considered one of the biological hotspots in the oceans, and just teeming with life. So, one of the scientists that's featured in this video, who's captured some of this footage, is a man named John Whitman, who's been going out there from Brown University for 50 years, and his censusing that he's done there over all those years, and then doing the same census work at a number of locations along the Gulf of Maine, closer to the coast, and in other areas of the Gulf of Maine. And it turns out that the amount of fish at Cassius Ledge are 500 times the amount of fish found at other areas in the Gulf of Maine. It's an area that has tremendous biomass of fish, big fish, cod, pollock, haddock, redfish, tremendous cunner, huge diversity of fish. And you may know cod was historically the most, was incredibly abundant here in the Gulf of Maine, the North Atlantic. It was eventually fished out of Canada, which was incredible that they stopped the fishery there because they overfished them. Here's a picture now of the whole screen is full of cod, just hundreds of cod. And so cod are now 1% of their abundance compared to what they were historically in the Gulf of Maine. 100 years ago, if we looked at the catch from Maine, the number one species that was caught in terms of its value and biomass was cod, and lobster was seventh. Today, lobster is number one by far. Cod isn't even caught hardly, and the cod have been incredibly fished out. But there at Cassius Ledge, and I'll talk about why the fish are still so abundant here at Cassius Ledge. But there at Cassius Ledge, it is a sanctuary already, with just teeming with big cod that are just super healthy. And so the video's over. So let me move on. And here are some quotes. Why and the simply the page says, "Why is Cassius Ledge important?" Well, Sylvia Earle had a chance to come and dive on Cassius Ledge in 2015. I think she was in her late 70s or early 80s at that point. I mean, she's an incredible force of nature, as we know. And she was out diving on Cassius Ledge at that time, and her impression, once she got back to the surface and had a chance to reflect for a moment, she said, "You know what? This is the Yellowstone of the North Atlantic." Robert Stenick, a long time, very famous marine scientist, studied ocean life all over the world, in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, in Alaska. Um, One of the top marine scientists in the world, and did a lot of pioneering research out at Cassius Ledge in the 1980s. Um, he considers Cassius Ledge a lost world. It's like I think the way he described it in a presentation that he gave on Cassius Ledge, he said, "Imagine if you got to go, if you really love dinosaurs and you got to go see dinosaurs. For me, going to this place was like that. It was like seeing the ocean the way it was 500 years ago." And John Whitman, who worked with him and continues to do research, his team was out there again this summer. Um, Although he's just retired from Brown University, his quote here is it's a biological diversity hotspot, and it is exceptional. Um, so here is a map showing, again, Cassius Ledge, but I wanted to show you it in relation to the other sanctuary that we have in the Gulf of Maine, and our one monument on the eastern seaboard, which is out at the entrance to the Gulf of Maine. So in this image, you can see the Gulf of Maine, and then there's a red box that is around the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, which is right off the tip of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and at the entrance to Boston, Massachusetts. So that has sanctuary status. And then we have, during the Obama administration in 2015, a marine monument that was created out off of Georges Bank, where the continental slope drops into the deep water. And there are 3 underwater canyons that one of them, oceanographers, is as big as the Grand Canyon underwater, right? And then there are 5 seamounts that are there that are under protection of the monument, and this area is one that has full protection. So a monument is different than a sanctuary in that a monument is maybe more restrictive in the conservation, in that it's the idea with the monument is that it's fully protected. So the commercial fishing that was happening there was what wasn't a lot of commercial fishing way offshore, 130 miles offshore, but that was phased out over 5 years or 7 years, right? So there's a few lobster fishermen and a little bit of Red Sea crab fishing were phased out, and however, there has been an effort from some of the groups that are against the expansion of monuments and protection of land, especially out west. Legal firms out there coming to the East Coast and getting fishermen to participate in suing to open up the monument again to fishing, which is surprising because there really wasn't a lot of fishing that happened there. One of the reasons why this area was designated for protection was because it too is a biological hotspot. These canyons are teeming with life, and as you know, with Monterey Bay rather, out in California, the abundance of life there, and just tremendous marine mammal populations out there. And so this was an effort to create a special protection of one of these areas where there's a great abundance of life. Then on this map, you can see in yellow, there's a yellow circle around Cassius Ledge. So you can see Cassius Ledge has been nominated by Conservation Law Foundation in 2024 to be considered for sanctuary status. So that's a long way from being a sanctuary. There's a lot that has to take place for that to happen. And I can talk a little bit more about that as we go. But at this point, at least the nomination papers have been submitted, along with a letter from dozens and dozens of scientists in support of it for all the reasons that you saw in the video and then in the the quotes, that this is such a unique, special area in the Gulf of Maine, and lots of public support. All sorts of people have written letters. And at the end of my presentation, there's a QR code where you can scan it and you can go to a petition that Conservation Law Foundation has set up to sign your name in support of the protection for creating a sanctuary at Cassius Ledge. This map that I have up here also describes some of the distances from shore out to Cassius Ledge. So from Bar Harbor, Maine, which you may know is like mid-coast Maine, Mount Desert Island, Acadia National Park, it's 104 miles. From Port Clyde, which is kind of the closest point to Cassius Ledge on the coast of Maine, it's 73 miles. From Portland, Maine, 81 miles. From Gloucester, 83 miles. And Provincetown, Massachusetts, 83 miles. So it's kind of almost an equal distance from Maine and Massachusetts, and maybe New Hampshire is a little bit further away, but kind of right in the center of the Gulf of Maine in federal waters, right? So state waters typically go out 3 miles, and then you're in federal waters. So it's in water that it would be federal waters. So a little bit different than Stellwagen Bank, which part of that includes state waters. Okay, let's move on. So here's a bit of a close-up picture so you could see the height of Cassius Ledge compared to the ocean. This is a bathymetric chart in color that shows the coast of Maine and New Hampshire a bit, and then Massachusetts, and then it shows in blue the deep water parts of the Gulf of Maine, and in green the high bottom where it becomes shallow. And you can see Cassius Ledge, this series of underwater ridges and ledges that's a very long and straight, that's 32 miles long. And you'll see, one thing I wanted you to see is that there's a basin in the middle here called Cassius Basin, which sits between Cassius Ledge, and then to the west, there's a bank that's kind of a big plateau, and that's Thippones Ledge. And so Thippones borders Cassius Basin and Cassius Ledge. Thippones too is an area of abundance of a lot of life, a lot of fish, a great abundance of marine mammals, because it's an area of shallow bottom that against deep water. Just to the west of Thippones Ledge is then the Wilkinson Basin, and this is one of the 3 deep water basins in the Gulf of Maine. And at a deeper spot here, the water depth is 900 feet. So that's deep for us. That's about as deep as it gets. So this is one of the areas where there's very deep water right up against this shallow water mountain ridge. That's one of the reasons why at times there's great upwelling there and more productivity. So let's talk a little bit about the productivity. This is a picture that talks about the oceanography of Cassius Ledge, and it shows the currents. And there's a current that comes down from the Arctic called the Labrador Current, which pours in off the tip of Nova Scotia, and then it runs down along the coast of Maine. It's called the Gulf of Maine Current. And it comes down the coast of Maine toward Massachusetts. And as it comes down the coast, some of it breaks off and goes out into the middle of the Gulf of Maine, and then some of it continues on down to Cape Cod, and it kind of wraps around Cassius Ledge. So you have cold, nutrient-rich water running around both sides of this ledge, and that creates upwelling out there where and it's a bit different than what we have along the shelf waters of the coast of Maine, where the water is running up against the ledge and then it moves towards shore. Here you have this kind of underwater seamount or island in the middle of the upwelling, so it helps make it an especially productive area. Another important thing is the internal waves. And internal waves can happen when there's a density difference in water. And sometimes that could be from tides or from wind or from steep slopes where you have cold water coming up and at an even rate, and then maybe it goes over the top and falls into an area where there's warmer water. And so you have a lot of mixing of low density surface water and high density cold water from below. And it creates what are known as internal waves, where they're not waves at the surface, but down 150, 200 feet in the water. And all around Cassius Ledge, scientists have documented a lot of internal waves, which is really cool. So that too is one of the reasons why it's especially productive, and it may be why kelp is so incredibly abundant at Cassius Ledge. In fact, scientists have discovered it's the deepest kelp that they found in the North Atlantic and the densest. It can go down 130 feet. 130 feet, and incredibly beautiful, big. And here's a picture for folks that can't see of a diver in among this incredible kelp coming up in all around. Well, of course, California, you have incredible kelp and kelp beds in California too. So you can appreciate that. But this is some of the deepest kelp found. Now, one of the interesting things when they were doing research in the 1980s out at Cassius Ledge, they had a ship from Harbor Branch in Florida, the Research Institute, and they had a manned ROV that could go down and had arms and could do scientific experiments and collect samples. And they did this over a couple of years, and they took one of the things they were interested in, Bob Stenick, John Whitman, and others, they took different types of algae from up above, and it was layered there, where there's a certain kelp at the top, and then another type of kelp down a little bit lower, and then different types of algae, and then you got down to crusty types of algae growing near the base of Almond Rock. So at Almond Rock, that high mountain peak, they took some of the different types of algae and seaweed, and they planted them down 250 feet on the ocean floor, down around the base of Amon Rock, and they wanted to see, could those species grow and survive down there? Why there was zonation up above, but why not down below? Could any of those species actually live further down? And they found all the different types of algae could survive and did. They came back a year later and they looked, and the other algae were flourishing. But kelp was not able to survive down in deeper water. So it seems that kelp is limited by the sunlight and being near the surface, and maybe some things like water temperature and the oceanography and stuff needs more sunlight and oxygen. So it was interesting study they did. There's three. This is a picture of the three more predominant types of kelp that are out there. The red, by the way, the red one in this picture here, this is sea lavender. This purplish red kelp or seaweed. I'm not sure that it's actually defined as a kelp, but these three are. We have sugar kelp, sea colander, which is also called shotgun kelp because it has a leaf with lots of holes in it. It's perforated, and it's a brown seaweed and a bigger size, about 2 feet. So that's sea colander or shotgun kelp. Then the sugar kelp is the predominant kelp, and that's the one that's up to 16 feet in size, yellowish brown, and has kind of a ribbon-like edges on the outside, ruffled edges. And then there's this beautiful type of kelp called horsetail or finger kelp, which comes all together up and then breaks out into a series of what looks like kind of like fingers, fronds or blades that are coming off. And so these are three of the predominant kelps that are found out there. Then there's, as you saw in the video, I know some couldn't see, but the seafloor was just covered in mussels, thousands and thousands of mussels, all packed together tightly. Just extraordinary, right? To see these seabeds of big, healthy mussels growing there. So all sorts of incredible shellfish. Here's a picture showing a whole diversity of different pictures of different sea life from down there. There's an American lobster, there's a spiny sunstar, burrowing anemones, sea stars. Then we have sea anemones, and some of the sea anemones they brought back from Cassius Ledge are 10 or 12 inches in size, enormous, beautiful white and pink and orange and tunicates, sponges, all, just every piece of seafloor is just covered and covered. And there was another video that I found of Cassius Ledge. There are a number of them online. If you'd like to go look, you can find them and enjoy them, to see the sea life there. But they came upon an area just as far as you could see in all directions, just covered in anemones, and it was just for someone who's gone to the seashore and tried to find anemones in a little tide pool, and how challenging it is sometimes to find them, and to see the abundance and the size of these anemones is just phenomenal. Just exceptional sea life there. Of course, lots and lots of fish. This is a picture of an Atlantic wolffish. The Atlantic wolffish can be up to 5 feet in length. They're really kind of odd. The color is quite beautiful. They're blue. They're kind of maybe like a mix of a moray eel and a codfish together, but imagine them all blue with big yellow eyes and enormous teeth. They have huge teeth, and they use those teeth to grind up shellfish and sea creatures from the seafloor. They're very predatory on invasive crabs like green crabs and sea urchins, which can be harmful to kelp and seabeds. So they're very helpful in regulating these other populations of marine life. As well, they lose their teeth every year. They lose all their teeth, and they regrow new teeth. And when they don't have teeth, they have to eat softer food that they can find or scavenge for things. The male wolffish protect the eggs. They're one of those fish species where the female lays the eggs and the male protects them. They can be very long-lived, but they're a species of concern. They've been overfished in the Gulf of Maine. So this is another wonderful reason why I think protecting Cassius and having an area that's more protected as a refuge for them would be really wonderful. Of course, codfish. And one of the things that's special about Cassius Ledge is that there's a red color phase of codfish there. And these are big, beautiful codfish. You may know cod normally are more olive green, but these are beautiful red. And there's a picture here now on the screen showing a couple of these beautiful red phase color cod. They're not unique to Cassius Ledge. They're found in a few other places in the Gulf of Maine, but it's not common. Here's a picture that shows lots and lots of cod on the screen, and maybe there's some pollock in there too. But as we were saying, the cod were, historically were incredibly abundant in the Gulf of Maine. The first settlers that came here wanted to settle here because, from Europe, because there was so much cod. It was so abundant, and it was such a good source of protein. The Native American people that are here, the Wabanaki, that are the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Micmac, and Maliseet, they believe that their God had given them cod to survive because cod were so abundant. And they would fish with hook and line for cod. And cod are found in their archaeological sites that date back thousands of years all along the coast of Maine. There are codfish bones in those campsites that they've excavated, along with shells that are, these are often defined by big shell heaps that are left from them feasting on shellfish called middens. And they found a lot of codfish bones in there. One of the interesting things Bob Stenick discovered is that, talking with archaeologists that do that work, is that what they have not found in those middens for thousands of years are lobster shells. So what he thinks is that lobster may not have been as abundant, and the reason is because cod are a predator on lobsters. and cod feed on the smaller lobsters. And they've done studies out at Cassius Ledge where there's an abundance of cod where they staked out lobsters and the cod would eat them immediately, the smaller lobsters. So they know that they will take the smaller lobsters. So it may have been that the native peoples didn't have as much lobster to feed on, or they didn't want to have lobster for some reason. But there's no reason that the lobster shell shouldn't have survived. So it's an interesting thought, and it's one of the reasons why lobster is so abundant now and such a dominant economic species for fishing, is because codfish have been overfished and they don't have a predator. So let's talk about this area known as a groundfish closure around Cassius Ledge that has been in place since 2002. So the New England Fish Management Council decided that they wanted to protect a number of areas in the Gulf of Maine to try to maintain cod, because cod had been, at this point in the 1990s, you may know that in New England, we lost a lot of our ground fishing fleet, that the fishery collapsed because of overfishing. And they were still making a big effort to try to manage what fish were left and save the fisheries, the cod, the ground fish fisheries. And so they created a number of groundfish closed areas in the Gulf of Maine. And of course, Cassius Ledge made the catch. Now, one of the things that's interesting, Cassius Ledge, it's not quite clear where the name comes from. It may be after a man named with the last name Cash. It could also be that it's related to crash. So instead of cash, it's crash ledge, where boats could run aground at times. But there's in the reading I did, there's a thought that that while there probably was fishing around Cassius Ledge, that like on Cassius Ledge, it was more challenging because of the current, and it was harder to anchor up there, to put an anchor in the water on the rocky bottom, so that maybe there wasn't as much fishing there. So therefore, this has been an area that has been kind of a sanctuary. And then in 2002, they made it even more so. And the blue area that you see on the screen here is the area that they created into a closure, right? They also have these habitat management areas that is a designation too, that they where they do especially focus a lot of science on those areas to do more detailed research and analysis. But they, in this effort, you can see they protected Phippines Ledge to the west. So the area is 550 square miles, and it's been off limits to net fishing for fishing draggers that would drag a net on the bottom for different types of shellfish or groundfish. So it's been off limits to that, or gill net fishing. However, lobster fishing continues, and so does pelagic fishing. So like pulling a big net through the ocean to catch Atlantic herring over the ledge. But if I understand correctly, I believe you have to have observers on the boat in the closed areas if you go there, and if you have a certain amount of bycatch, you're shut out immediately. So they do try to monitor the closed areas more closely with observer coverage. So this is where things stand presently. There has been a protection there in this area for 23 years. And you can see another picture here on the right that shows it. So you can see two images of the same thing here. One without the bathymetry though, so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So let's look at the proposal that Conservation Law Foundation and their team of scientists that they worked with put in as a nomination to be considered. Their idea was to create an area that's about 766 miles, so it's slightly bigger than the closed area that's in place now. And what they've done is created a box around that entire 766 miles that includes this ridge on the north side of Cassius called Sigsbee Ridge, and then down at the bottom there's a ridge called Parker Ridge. And if you look at that image where it shows everything in color, a heat map that shows the high parts of the bottom, you can see what they've done is they've tried to maintain that whole complex of those ridges so they're all interconnected in one whole ecological unit. So it kind of looks like a seahorse, right, with the head up above there, and then it goes down. And what they've done is tried to create a box around those three ridges so they're all interconnected and protected and have some sanctuary status. Now, in the middle, they created a box that's about 194 square miles. That's the blue box in the middle of the screen here, and that is an area that would be fully protected. So that would be more fully protected from commercial fishing. The rest of the area would be continue to be managed by the fisheries, New England Fish Management Council, the way that they do in Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary, where they manage the fisheries there. But it does create a bit of a special protection in the middle. So 194 square miles, it might sound like a lot, but it's actually just 14 miles by 14 miles, right? And it covers Amen Rock and that whole series of really big mountains right in the middle that are so important to that complex. It doesn't include Fippany's Ledge, so they made a decision to not include Fippany's. Of course, if the council decided they wanted to keep the closure to cover Fippany's, then Fippany's would still have protection. Okay, so I have conducted a series of trips. I've had a chance to go to Cassius Ledge 5 times now. A couple of trips were research related, but I've also more recently chartered that same boat that I took on the surveys, the Friendship 5, through Bar Harbor Whale Watch Company. I was able to charter the vessel to do trips to Cassius Ledge to look for whales and marine life, and bring along passengers as a way to make the trip viable. And so we did this trip that we saw finback whales over Cassius Ledge on October 14th, 2023. And we found, well, we saw whales on the way out and on the way back, but over Cassius Ledge, we found finback whales. We also saw that day, when we got closer to Almond Rock, we turned and looked, and here, charging, stampeding over the water, leaping across the ocean was and here, by the way, here's another picture of a finback. I don't mean to skip them. I'm just conscious of time here. But the finback, the second largest whale on Earth, right? And here's an illustration with an image that we took that day of a finback at Cassius Ledge. And the finback whales we can track as individuals as well, like the right whales. And then we also saw this big group of common bottlenose dolphins, which are not a common dolphin for us to see in the Gulf of Maine, but we kind of call them offshores. They're different than the coastal bottlenose dolphins. There's a couple of different subspecies of the common bottlenose dolphin, but this one is a group. This group was about 75 to 100. They're big, 10 to 12 feet long. They leap out of the water. This is a mother and calf dolphin on the screen jumping. I think here again, and you can see them. And they went racing by us, and that was really an awesome sight to see. They're always fantastic to see. We saw a lot of seabirds out there on that trip. We saw Pomeranian Jaegers. Here's a dark phase of this bird. They're an Arctic species of bird that come down in the fall. They nest up in the Arctic, and there's 3 different species, and the Pomeranian is the largest, and they have different color phases. So this is a dark phase, which is quite beautiful, and then here's a light phase Pomeranian Jaeger, and these are pictures from that trip. We also saw a lot of northern gannets. They're always a thrill. I'm sorry?
I'll have to interrupt. We're running long on time.
Okay.
Can you flash the petition?
Yeah, let's go right to the end here. So here is the petition, the QR code right here,
Yeah.
that people can scan if you'd like. And that's where you can sign to help us create the special protection for this area. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Sure. Sorry to cut you short. But
No, no problem. I was almost done.
Right. All right. Well, thanks again, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. And thank you, Sherry, for leading us in a fabulous day of Ocean Life Symposium 2025. You can catch all the playback by the hour on YouTube at KGUA Public Media Station, or you can go to the northcoastlink.com, go to Sustainable Futures, and I'll have them all posted there for you to listen to. This has been a wonderful day of so much education to learn about our life out in the ocean here and how important it is to protect it and keep it sacred. So thank you to everyone for joining us today, and thanks to all of our guests, our hosts, and to the Whale and Seal, Mendonoma Whale and Seal Study, Tree and Scott Mercer, for making this all happen. And we're going to take you now